Go.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm, as the co-coordinator of the fall workshop, one of my favorite roles is introducing our guest workshop artists. And tonight, as Deb said, the artist is Pam Wenger. You might be surprised to know that Pam has been painting seriously only since retiring about 10 years ago from her career as an elementary school teacher. And additionally, she has a certification in educational technology. I have to say that came in very handy in the workshop because of all the different ways in which she could communicate with us and have us send things to her and share and talk and learn. During the 3-day portrait workshop that we just completed, her professional experience was so evident, as was her talent and joy, actually, for painting lively, colorful images of her favorite subject, which is people. And tonight she's going to share her step-by-step quick sketch process that she uses to make painting portraits accessible and inviting. And you'll notice her skill, you'll notice her encouraging nature as she brings to life a fresh, sparkly face right before our very eyes. So it's my pleasure to virtually welcome Pam to the Niagara Frontier.
Thank you, Betty. I appreciate that intro, and welcome to all of you. Thanks for inviting me to your neck of the woods. Actually, you did invite me there physically, but because of this COVID thing, we had to switch things around. And I have just spent a lovely 3 days with some wonderful painters and wonderful people from your group and thoroughly enjoyed it. So I'm glad we get one more night together. As Betty said, I've kind of come to this portrait painting or this watercolor experience late in the game. Actually retired from public school teaching in 2013, and immediately took a little workshop from my local art organization to find out how to buy paint, and that I did discover right off the bat that there wasn't a tube labeled flesh, which I honestly had been looking for online, thinking that's what I would need, but shows you where my mind was. I have always been a drawer, but the painting has just come in the last 7 years, actually. Taking a workshop with Ted Nuttall and Charles Reed really cemented my love for portrait work, and I've just kind of accidentally fallen into this workshop role, and it's been wonderful. I've loved it, especially the part where I get to enjoy meeting other people on this same journey and hopefully evangelize a little bit about my love for painting portraits in watercolor. And so tonight I'm planning to paint a little sketch for you of my granddaughter and share with you my quick sketch process. That's what I've been promoting in the workshops. I do other types of work, larger pieces and take a longer time, and we can address how you transfer from the quick sketch to that in our conversation if you want to tonight. So I'd like this to feel as comfortable and as natural as possible. So as I'm demoing, feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question or make a comment. And I've learned to chatter while I paint, so I think we can pull that off. So what I'd like to do is, first of all, explain to you what I mean by this quick sketch process and just give you a quickly little overview of the process before I begin painting. I'm going to share a little presentation from my computer here. I share this quote with my classes because to me this kind of sums it up. Painting a portrait is celebration of life. So I'm going to show you a few examples. To me, these are quick sketch examples. They typically take me maybe an hour and a half to paint. The drawing often takes longer because I do like to draw freehand. This guy took longer because I had to draw 3 of him. So these are just samples of what I typically draw on a little watercolor sketch pad, a 9x12 sketch pad. and I'm calling those quick sketches. They are not as finished as my work that I enter into shows, but I want to share with you my 3-step painting process. I'll give you a brief overview and then we'll go right into doing the demo. And like I said, feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question or make a comment as we go along. I can really handle that. In fact, it makes it nicer. So this is the pre-painting step. And I wanted to show you a more complicated drawing than we're actually going to use tonight when I paint my granddaughter. This is, of course, a painting of me, or a picture of me. I usually doctor my photos and go more extreme with my shadow shapes before I begin my drawing so I can see more value changes. And what I have on my paper before I begin painting really sometimes looks like a topographical map, because that's what it is to me. I'm looking to map out 4 different values: the white of the paper, what I would leave as flesh tone, the very lightest value I have on my paper, midtones, and darker tones. So 4 tones: the darkest, a midtone, the lighter tone, which is just the flesh color, and then the white of the paper. So I'm basically drawing lines around all those value shapes. And so there are a lot of lines on this paper, and it makes sense to me because I drew it. As you're beginning this process, I would assume you wouldn't have this many lines, and I encourage in my workshops people to actually put a color by number kind of code on their drawing. Sometimes they'll put a W for white, or F for flesh, or D for the darkest. But this is what I typically start with when I'm doing a quick sketch. Then step 1 for me is going in with burnt sienna, and I'm picky about my burnt sienna. I use Holbein burnt sienna because I feel that it has the warmth for this underpainting layer that I need. And I've seen other burnt siennas that were more like burnt umber and did not work so well with the transparent colors that I like to put on top. So I'm using Holbein burnt sienna, and to go a little bit darker, you can see some of the areas like on the cheeks, the bottom of the chin, around the eyes. I've gone a little bit darker than I could get with the burnt sienna. So I've added in a little alizarin crimson. So layer 1, step 1 is the burnt sienna, Holbein burnt sienna, and some alizarin crimson to get a little bit darker. Now, I encourage my students to play with this layer and try other types of pigments for the underpainting, but this is my tried and true, and I use it on almost every painting that I do. So burnt sienna and alizarin, and that's basically giving me a sculpted 3-dimensional look that I can tell whether I have my likeness at this stage. I purposely force myself not to paint the eyes in at step 1 because I know what I'm like, and if I feel like the eyes are working, I feel like, wow, this is done. I don't want to work on it anymore. So I make myself wait on the eyes. So it looks kind of freaky at first. At the end of this step 1, I do usually tone down the whites of the eyes with a little bit of cobalt blue, just to prepare myself for step 2. So step 1, the underpainting with my darkest to midtones. Step 2 is where I force myself to think about crazy color. We call it the arbitrary color, and I didn't make up that term. I stole that from Ted Nuttall, who says he stole it from Charles Reed. So I'm using 3 arbitrary colors lately in my workshops, and that is the Hooker's green, which is a very turquoisey green, and peacock blue, a lot like manganese blue. If you have manganese, it will work the same way, very transparent. And then I also have quinacridone magenta that I'm using for some of the darker areas. So 3 colors that you wouldn't necessarily think of using, maybe especially on a pale skinned person's face. And I'm forcing myself to do it at step 2 rather than trying to add them on at the end. Because if I had a lovely flesh tone across the whole face, I would have a hard time forcing myself to go in and put some of these weird colors in. But it's not so bad at this stage because the face isn't finished. And usually what I'm looking for are areas that are mid-toned to darker tones. You can see I've got some blue on the inside of the eye, on the part of the head that's curving around toward the hair, on the forehead, in that spot underneath the mouth. I've got a bit of green on the nose here too. I typically don't put those cooler colors on the cheeks with a lighter skinned person, but you can see some of my go-to spots for those arbitrary colors. And usually on step 2, I finish the eyes and put a few strokes of value in the hair as well. I used to save the hair to my last step, step 3. There are only 3 steps in this process. But I found out that I was treating the hair really like an add-on at the end, and it showed. It looked like it was rushed. So I start thinking about the hair and go in with some of the darker shapes on step 2. Okay, so we've had step 1, just the underpainting with the burnt sienna and alizarin, then adding the arbitrary colors and the eyes. Because I have glasses on in this painting, I do add the glasses on in step 2. And then the last step is to add the flesh tones, and finish the hair. The flesh tone for me right now is a vermilion and Windsor yellow deep for the most part. When I'm dealing with a darker skinned person, I may add in things like mineral violet or another color, but this is my go-to. On the top, I've got my Windsor yellow deep and my vermilion, and occasionally a little touch, and you'll see that when I do my demo, a little touch of Quinn Coral, which I'm just loving as a kind of a glowy color. And of course I finish the hair, which is very quick. The reason I'm promoting this whole quick sketch idea, rather than sitting down to a more finished painting right away, is because portrait work is so daunting. There's so many moving pieces to a portrait. I think if you have to deal with composition and clothing and background, it's just adding so much to it, and the pressure that you put on yourself when you're sitting down to an $11 piece of paper, and all those other factors is going to tighten you up, and it's going to not make you want to experiment and play around and learn as much as you will if you do frequent quick sketches. Now I'm going to stop my share and show you the type of tablet that I'm doing these quick sketches on. This is the paper that I'm using for all my quick sketches, and in my class workshops, because I send these lightly printed drawings to the workshop participants as well, is just this cheap little Canson student grade pad, 30 sheets for usually about $6 or $7. And it's called cold press, but because it's student grade, it acts a little bit more like hot press, and it takes some getting used to. But because I know I'm only paying pennies for each sheet of paper, I just feel free to experiment. If something doesn't work, I toss it in the waste can, or maybe I keep it around as a reminder. So I'm encouraging you to do more of the sketching before sitting down to a more finished piece of work. I use the same process on my finished work. It's just that I take more time, and so of course there will be more layers, and it will be a more finished look because I'm thinking about composition, I'm thinking about clothing and all the other pieces. So I'm going to switch you over to my other camera, and we're going to begin a painting of my granddaughter Josie. And like I said, feel free to ask questions and chime in. Okay, this is kind of a low-tech way to show you the reference photo, because I don't have a fancy camera setup. I just have an iPad over top here. So we will begin. Oh, first of all, I should say, I should have shown you this actually. I always doctor up my photos before I begin. I create a really dark version of my photo so that I can see the shadow shapes before I draw. And then I create a really light version as well, so that I can see areas that are obscured maybe by shadow. And so I have my iPad in front of me and I can take a look at that. I can swipe between the different versions. And I chose to do Josie tonight because I know I have a shorter amount of time, and I thought because it's a simpler face, not that it's not challenging, it's less is more, but fewer planes of the face to deal with on a young child, which is of course a challenge. I think in some ways it's more fun to do, to paint a person with a little bit more age. The first thing I'm doing right now, because this is the cheaper paper is putting in a few lines that I know can get obscured with my subsequent washes. So I'm just using my burnt sienna mixed with the alizarin, which is my darker mixture at this point, and I'm darkening in a little bit of the crease line behind Josie's eyes here.
Can
With
you tell
these
us about your brushes, Pam?
Oh, I should mention the brushes. Yeah, I use very inexpensive brushes. They used to be Loa Cornell, but that company got bought out by a company called King Art. So now I'm buying King Art. They're called the King Art Original Gold. You can buy them for about $9 from a company called Hofcraft. You can actually buy them on Amazon or any of the art companies, but Hofcraft sells them for about $8.50 for the number 10s. And I typically use a number 10 for a quick sketch of this size. And I'm just using this 9x12 tablet piece that you saw. When I get to the hair or the neck or some larger areas, I usually switch over to a 12 rather than a 10, because then I can paint a little bit bigger swoops with it. So thanks for mentioning that. When I do my larger work, I am working on hot press. I'm definitely a hot press fan. I'm using Saunders Waterford hot press 200-pound right now for all my bigger work. Which, yeah, I think whatever paper you get used to is what you end up sticking with. I don't know how people go back and forth between types of paper, but I admire you if you can do that. So I put in a few darker lines right here with the burnt sienna alizarin mix, just so that they wouldn't get obscured and I wouldn't have to rethink them when I'm going in with some of the other washes. So now I'm just picking up some burnt sienna and I'm going to walk around Josie's face and kind of sculpt it. I'll be putting other color in the eyebrows, but I want to get the eyebrows down there because I know that'll help me know if I have a likeness at this point. And when I'm putting down my strokes for the eyebrows, I'm making sure that I'm indicating the way that the eyebrows are growing. I feel it's important to be deliberate with all of my strokes. In fact, any stroke I'm putting down, I'm thinking about the beginning of that stroke and I'm thinking about the ending of that stroke. So I'm trying to be as deliberate as possible with all my brush work. And like I said, please ask me questions if you want here. So I'm just kind of roughing in these eyebrows so that I'll know if I have a likeness. And usually with the eyebrows too, I make sure I touch the bottom in a few spots just to break up that line, because this is hair growing from the skin and I don't want it to look like they're caterpillars cut out and pasted on there. Anytime you see hair actually growing from the skin, you need to touch it and soften it in some areas. I don't like to soften all my lines. I like my lines to have some hard edges and some soft edges. I'm going to put some of the mid-tones in. I'm going to alternate between mid-tones and darker tones right now as I'm sculpting this face. I'm seeing this shape on the left side of her nose here. I love the shapes that are made by the shadows on the bottom of the nose. I love it when you have a photo that is taken from an angle that's slightly below the person. You get those lovely little shadow shapes on the nose. I'm gonna let that dry for a minute and then come in and put a few more of those shadow shapes. I'm gonna go up to around the eyes now and deal with some of the darker shapes. I felt that my reference made Josie look a bit Neanderthal, so because of that heavy shadow in her brow area. So I'm not gonna go quite as dark as that, but I do need to indicate some of that. So I'm alternating between just the pure burnt sienna and the burnt sienna alizarin mix here, trying to walk around her face. I touch my brush on the piece of paper or paper towel before I put it on the paper usually. Okay, this needs to go way darker than that. So have to do this building up process a little bit. And between steps 1, 2, and 3, I do wait and make sure it's dry. Sometimes I use my little craft dryer, which is a great little tool. It's not noisy like a hair dryer is. Well, I just made that line a little bit too dark, so the bottom will have to get darkened. I'm looking for midtones and darkest tones. So I'll be leaving a lot of white of the paper at this point, because some of that white of the paper will get my lightest value, which will be my flesh tones. And I'm trying to avoid some of the areas, like I marked a few areas that I want to leave purely white of the paper. She does need a little bit of darkness in between these brows. She was giving me that look, like she was sick of me taking photos of her, so she was ready to bolt. And I kind of like that little attitude. I was telling my class, one of my favorite things with the iPhones now is that live setting, because you can choose, when you go into your editing program, you can choose the split second that you want to use as your reference and make that your reference. Because sometimes especially with kids, it's that little second before or after the shutter snaps that's actually what you want. Okay, so I know she's a young child, but I still feel these little bags under her eyes are going to be important. And I see a bit of a line here, although I'm not going to accentuate it too much. You've got, I don't like to outline the eyes. Actually, I don't like to outline any feature. I keep showing examples to my classes of outlining that just makes a picture look more like an amateurish illustration. But I'm putting a few marks at the bottom of her eye here just to indicate where the pad of flesh lies. I'm just putting them at the edges here. And because Josie has brown eyes, I do usually allow myself the luxury of putting just a first pass of burnt sienna, since I'm working with the burnt sienna. If she had anything other than the brown eyes, I don't typically put any color on step 1, but it helps me know that I have a likeness. But if she had blue or green eyes, I would just leave them go. And when I'm working with the eyes, I tend to use vertical strokes. I like the control I have with that. And I also like the fact that sometimes it makes the bottom circle a little more uneven. You'll see that when I put the pupil in, I will use vertical strokes as well. I just run roughshod over the pupil right now, though. I'll be putting that in later once I get to step 2. Okay. And one of the things I'm doing at this stage is constantly squinting and looking at my reference and looking at my painting to see if my values are making sense. And I know I wish I could paint a little faster than this. I often look at my speeded up demos. I put them on YouTube twice as fast, and I think, man, I wish I could paint that quickly. But you don't have to. I do paint quickly. I realize that, quicker than a lot of people are comfortable with. You don't have to paint this quickly to do quick sketches. You can paint them at your own speed. Oh, I need a little something in the philtrum area here. And if I feel like an area, a line is drying too harshly, like this line on the nose, I just feel like that's going to be a detractor. I will go in and touch it with a clean, damp brush to kind of break it up, because it's those harsh, unbroken lines that are the areas of high contrast, and that's what draws our attention to an area. I don't want the attention all to go there. So I need a darker shadow now on this side of her nose. And maybe a little bit more here. Kind of obliterated the nostrils. We'll bring them back. This first step is the step I don't skimp on, because this is the step that actually gives me the likeness. And it's the structure for the whole piece. Actually, I don't skimp it all on the drawing as well. To me, the structure of the drawing is what holds it all together. And if I didn't have that, I wouldn't know how to proceed. Any other medium will give you a chance to change your mind, but watercolor, as you know, especially transparent watercolor, not forgiving. It's not easy. Well, especially in paper like this, you cannot lift. There's not much to do if you've made a mistake, a big mistake. So now I love that little area below the mouth before where the chin begins to jut out. That's just a great shape. So fewer shapes on a young child, of course, but there's still plenty of shadow information, value change information. One of the things we talked about in our class is other programs that can help you see some of those value changes. We have a lot of posterizing apps, different websites even that will posterize for you, like simple, oh, I can't even think of the name of it. Maybe someone from our class can. But lots of apps that will posterize. And of course, Photoshop Elements or Photoshop will apply filters that will posterize and help you see some of these shadow shapes. Mostly, I don't like to go in and posterize for my own work. I tend to just like to get a really nice, dark reference photo so I can interpret those shapes myself. I'm getting a bit red here, but that's all right. I'm trying to restate some of the shadow areas here. I see some places where I need to build up some shapes. You guys are being awfully quiet, and I'm not even looking over there to see if you're still there. I'm getting a bit more pigment ready. You can, if you can see my palette a little bit over here, I wanted you to be able to see that I'm pretty much using like a tea water kind of mixture. I'm very washy with these layers, and with all my layers, I don't tend to apply the pigment very thickly. Okay, now I'm looking for a few more areas here. Shadow shapes. There's not much cheek structure to a young child like this. I mean, her cheeks kind of bulge out, and I've got awkward lighting. Of course, it's hard to get perfect lighting, hard to get anything perfect when it comes to a photo of a child. So I've got multiple sources of lighting. The majority of the lighting is coming from the left, left and down, but there's also a lighter area on the right. She was standing out in the deck, so there were different sources of light. So I'm just kind of getting this darker shape that's climbing up her chin here. I've got a few shapes on the left side to deal with. I think these are just shadows from the hair, but I need to shape the face a bit more, and I do see shadow shape coming from the eye over to the side of the head here. You know, I find the more I do this, the more I see shapes that I wouldn't have seen, say, a year ago. You can teach yourself to see, and I think we all know as artists that seeing is a learned process. It's not something that's automatic. It took me a while to realize that, and I used to think in my workshops, why don't you see that shape? I realized I didn't see those shapes at first either. Okay, we need something to help define this little bit of the left side of her nose here. So what I've got on here are basically midtones to darker tones right now. I will be coming in with my arbitrary colors next and helping to restate some of those values. My very lightest value doesn't happen until the end, and that's the flesh tone, which is my very last step. So seriously, you guys don't have any questions? Wow, you're just gonna make me chatter away, aren't you? I guess I'm capable of that. So I'm just going in now and looking for some more nuanced value changes. I'm not dealing with the eyelashes or anything fancy like that at this point. That will come on step 2.
How about her neck?
Yeah, thanks for that. I'm guessing that was that Carol.
Yeah.
You know, I tend to forget the neck. I get carried away on the face, and I want to treat the neck and the ears. Well, in her case, we really don't have much of an ear. There's a little bit of a shadow shape in here. I treat them the same way as the face, and I was, well, except for when I ignore them, just like I was doing there. So thank you for that. Deepen these little shadow shapes a bit. So one of the things about the jawline that I want to mention to you is that I really try to make sure I have a lost edge on the jaw somewhere, at least one lost edge. If you don't, and I know a lot of times you're looking at a photo and it just looks like there's a perfect line there. But if you treat that as a harsh, unbroken line, it's going to look like the person's head is cut out and pasted on, which of course you don't want. So right now I'm going to put in this a bit of a darker shadow shape on the mid part of her neck. And I'll be restating a lot of these with my arbitrary color. That'll be an area that gets some of the Quinn magenta. I'll make this go down here. I don't spend much time on clothing at all with these quick sketches. Remember, I said this, I use this as an opportunity to practice the face. Well, hair too, of course, but I don't have to think about composition. I don't have to think about clothing. Hence, I'm not very good at painting clothing, but clothing is a bigger struggle for me. Sometimes I forced myself just to paint clothing, just to paint some cloth to kind of get the hang of it. But I treat the cloth the same way I treat the face. I'm looking for the shadow shapes. I just may not use this type of underpainting. It depends on what the local color is of the fabric. Okay. Yeah, thanks for that, Carol. It gave me a wake-up call. Okay, so restating a little. Yes.
I just wanted to say it's really important when you're picking out the King Art brushes that the model number is a 9020.
Yes.
And that's the one that's so full bodied, but it has that beautiful point.
Exactly. And if you do go to the Hofcraft site, that's a great comment. Thank you. You'll see you get to a page. It's not a fancy website. You get to a page that has a ton of King Art brushes. So let me bring this up. You do want the 9020, and this one's called Max Round. So it's called King Art Original Gold 9020 Max Round. Okay, I'm almost done with step 1. Gee, I'm painting really fast tonight. Can't believe it. Maybe I did do this on double time. Well, I'm just showing you how quickly you can paint a portrait. One of the things I see I've lost is the nostrils. So I'm going to go in and darken those just a little bit. And I will admit, I just cheated and picked up a little bit of pigment that's on my palette, a color I didn't even know existed until recently, Perylene Maroon. A lot of you probably already have it on your palettes. I'm using it for just these darkest areas, and it's a quick way to get me there rather than to have to worry about a thicker mixture of the alizarin and the burnt sienna. So yeah, I cheated. Perylene Maroon on the brush right now. Okay. You notice where the lips are coming together? I like to have a broken line. I don't like that to be a solid line, because if it's a solid line and it's not varied enough, it's going to be an attention grabber. And I don't want any spot on my painting to draw all the attention. I want to spread it around. Okay, I'm just kind of squinting here at the end, looking for some places where I might need to darken a bit and do a little bit more shaping. I feel like I didn't give this nose quite enough shaping over on the left. I wanted to leave a bit of a gleam in the middle there. There's a bit of a value change coming down from there. You know, I know she has a young, very smooth face, but even these short, choppy strokes that I'm making and the arbitrary colors can work with a young face. I used to be kind of terrified of using the arbitrary colors with a child's face, or especially with a baby's face, but they really do work, especially if you keep them very washy like I'm doing. So I'm just kind of looking here to see if I want to make any last changes. It's not that I can't come in again with this color, but I'd rather get this done all at once. There's a bit of a shadow over that eye, a bit of a shadow over here too. A little bit more here. And I got that. Yeah, I'm just kind of walking around one last pass. I feel like maybe I need a bit of a lighter mid-tone over on the left-hand side to kind of show that her cheek is jutting out there. Okay, almost there with step one.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is Eileen. I do have my microphone on. Hey, a question. Are you looking, you don't seem to be looking at the photo. You seem to be looking up. Are you looking at a screen or what do you?
Good question, Eileen. I am looking at an additional iPad that I have. That's yes, I am looking at an iPad screen. This to me is a little too small to look at. And so I am looking, you're exactly correct. I'm looking up at my iPad screen, and I do use my iPad as my reference for every single thing I paint. I just love the fact that you can, take your fingers and pinch and, have a big screen. I don't know how you work, Eileen. Do you print yours out?
After I draw it up, it all just comes out of my head. I don't look at anything.
Jeez. Okay, that blows my mind.
So we're just different. Okay, I'm going to unmute.
No, that was a great question, though. You are exactly right. I am looking up at an iPad screen. I was telling the group I heard Stan Miller was doing some kind of a demo, and he made the comment, well, if you use a digital device for your reference, you will not get good results. So if after getting over my being offended for a few seconds, I realized, that's Stan's truth. For him, it just doesn't make sense to use the digital device. For me, it's invaluable. I can't imagine not having it. And I don't like having a printed reference. I know a lot of workshop, and my buddy Ted, not all, he insists that you have a printed black and white version of your reference. And I just, my brain doesn't work that way. So this works for me. I love having a variety of pictures that I can scroll between. So I think I'm about ready to call this step done. Maybe a little bit more here. You know how it is with us painters. I'm done. No, one more thing. No, one more thing. Okay. I'm going to say step one is done, and I'm picking up a little bit of cobalt. Seriously, Eileen, you just did blow my mind when you said you then go just out of your head. I wish I could do that. Okay, I'm going to tone down the whites of the eyes, because as you know, whites whites of the eyes are not really white. So I grab a blue that's not so turquoisey. I wouldn't use my peacock blue in here. I'm just picking up a cobalt. And sometimes, depending on if it's an older person, I may put in something warmer here. I might put some raw sienna in. But right now I'm just doing a little pass of this cobalt to tone them down. I'll probably have to come in later and put some more of the shadow from the upper lid and all that, but toning it down before I get to step 2, which is the arbitrary color. So I think this is about as far as I need to go with Miss Josie at this point. I'm going to give her a little dash with the craft heating tool here to make sure things are dry. Okay. Now unfortunately, you're not going to be able to see the side of my palette that has my peacock blue and my hooker's green. Rest assured, I'm still doing sort of a tea water approach to these. And I will get my Quinn Magenta out here. Now I am experimenting with different arbitrary colors. In the workshops, I try to keep it simple, and I'm going with these basic colors right now. They're tried and true for me because I know that they are transparent. I think that's really important when I'm working this way. With a darker skinned person, I may experiment with something else. In our class, we worked with a little bit of the underpainting being mineral violet instead of just going as dark as we could with the alizarin mixed with the burnt sienna. But right now I'm going to pick up some of the quinacridone magenta and put in a few of my darkest arbitrary colors. So there's logical places for this. This would be, of course, the dark shadow on the upper lid here. If there is a dark shadow, and there is with Josie. Probably in this interior shape inside where the nose meets the eye. And notice I'm being very deliberate about these strokes. I want the energy of a stroke where you're actually thinking about the beginning and the end of it will help make this look like it's loose and fresh. I'm going to put a little bit of the Quinn Magenta over here as well. She looks a little angry right now, but that hopefully will dissipate. I get her eyes in. I see a nice place for a darker passive color, which down the bottom of her nose here, maybe over on the right-hand side where that darker shadow is. And I'm treating the lips just like any other part of the face. I don't save the lips for later. I mean, to me, it's just a shape. And so I'm using a bit of the Quinn Magenta over here on the side where I've already put some darker color. There's a bit of a shadow made by that upper lip onto the lower lip there, and a bit of a darker area on the left side as well. And I think because it's such a deep shadow under her lip, I'm going to use a bit of the Quinn Magenta, at least for the main part of it. I'll probably come into the right and left with something else. And this is a perfect color to use down here on the neck to help indicate that shadow. So the more you do these, I'm doing them quickly, the more you think of ideas that you can use in your more finished paintings. It just takes so much of the pressure off. People who only sit down to do a portrait a couple times a year can't expect to work out the bugs. You can't. You're going to tighten up so much. You're painting it for a show. You're painting it for a commission. You're probably tightening up. You're going to scrub all the life out of it. Okay, so I'm putting in some of my darkest darks right now. Because I want to see how those eyebrows are going to work, I'm going to add a color that's not, I don't consider one of my usual arbitrary colors. I'm adding a bit of mineral violet into the eyebrows. I think the eyebrows are a great chance to play with some colors. And remember, I'm trying to make my strokes echo the way that the eyebrows are growing here. I don't typically even finish the eyebrows all in one pass. I just put some color down, see how it's working, let it dry, and then add something in later. I'll probably come in with some blue as well, because her eyebrows are reading fairly dark to me, especially this one on the right. So I've got some mineral violet in there. I'll come in with some blue. Maybe I'll put that in now. Put a little bit of indigo in and see how that will work. Okay. I don't want them to go too dark, but they're reading a bit dark. And if the tops and start looking a little caterpillary, I'm going to touch them with a clean damp brush as well. Now I want to tackle these eyes, and because they're brown, I'm going to start with my base, of course, of the burnt sienna, which I already have one little pass on. I've drawn in where I want the iris, the pupil to be, but this is not nearly dark enough yet. So I'm trying to avoid painting over the gleam in the eye. But on these quick sketches, if I somehow obliterate that gleam, which I might have on this right one, I'll go in with a little bit of white gouache and put it in. Now, I would never do that on something I'm planning for a show, especially like if it's for a show that's requiring transparent color all around. I use these up and down strokes for the eye. Now I've got to let this dry just a bit before I can put in my pupil. And I think I might need to go a bit darker. Her eyes really are very, very dark. And I think I probably have to use a bit of burnt umber instead of the burnt sienna. I'm getting that out of my palette. You guys still there? I hope. I'm talking to myself. Okay, I'm restating.
I'm here at least, Pam.
Thanks for that. I appreciate it. Okay, while I'm waiting for a little bit of those irises to dry, I'm going to put in, I'm going to start indicating some lashes. And usually, because I feel timid about the lashes, I start with a color that's lighter than the lashes actually are. So I'm picking up just some burnt sienna here. She's got ridiculously long lashes, and it's difficult not to over glamorize the lashes, but these are long. I want to do them justice. One of the things to keep in mind is that you don't want your eyelashes all to be too evenly spaced. You try to cluster them. I like going in with a little bit lighter color first, so that if I change my mind, if somehow I got them going in the wrong direction, I can lift it out. So right now, I've just put in a few basics. Her eyelashes are almost going straight up in the middle. So once I feel that I have them going the right direction, then I can come in with something a bit darker. In this case, I might be a bit literal and just come in with some burnt umber. And especially at the base of the lashes, I think there's a tendency to get too thick at the tip of the lashes, in which case it's easy. Just take a clean damp brush and touch the tip and soften it out. So the lashes are working for me over there. I'm going to pick up a bit of the burnt sienna, and I don't always indicate the lower lashes, but because I see the clusters of hers, and she's got a little feminine look, so I'm putting a few of the little clusters of lower lash. And lower lashes are not growing from the eye. You have to look at, that little pad of flesh. And if you get them if you go too crazy with them, you just touch them with a clean damp brush and tone them down. So I've got to deal with the eyelashes over on the right side. I'm looking at a really darkened version, and I'm being too lazy to slip back to the version where I can really see her lashes, but I have painted her before. So someone in our class this week was painting this young boy with incredibly long eyelashes. It was like almost unbelievable. So you had to kind of tone them down, or the lashes would have taken over. But one thing I do notice, that people do tend to glamorize the lashes, especially on a female. I think they want to give them all false lashes or something. So I've got a few crazy lashes there. I'll drop in a little bit of the darker pigment at the base of these lashes. Remember, we didn't want to do eyeliner, but putting the thicker pigment at the base of these lashes gives you the feel of the thickness of these lashes. So now I feel like it's time to go back to those eyeballs and put in the pupil. Because I've got transparent colors and I didn't go too far with my burnt sienna and burnt umber, I can still see my line that I've drawn for my pupil. And I go in a little bit tentatively at first because I want to make sure that I get that pupil where I want it. I feel like I need it to be down a bit more. I'm using vertical strokes, and I kind of messed up there, but part of the reason I use those vertical strokes is I like that broken up line that I get at the bottom. I don't like it to be perfectly round. If it looks too round, it looks unnatural and draws attention to itself. So if it looks too round, I'll just touch it with a clean, damp brush and kind of break it up anyway. So I will
What
go
color
in.
is that for the pupil?
Good question. I used to use only indigo, but because I put Payne's Gray on my palette about a year ago, that's what I've been using. Really, the indigo works perfectly fine, but I am using Payne's Gray at the moment. So I've got these pupils in. I think the one on the right is not big enough yet, so I'm going to add a few more strokes. And she looks strange because I haven't put any shadow that's made by the upper lid. You know, the upper lid casts a shadow on the iris and pupil area. It casts a shadow on the white of the eye too, which I do need to put in. So right now I'm using some burnt umber to kind of indicate that shadow on the upper part of the iris here. It really does make a huge difference in making your person look alive. I might be a little too wet to be doing this dangerous move of darkening the pupil, but we'll chance it for now. Okay, I'll probably come back into this a little bit later. I'll let this dry. And since I talked about darkening the upper part of the white of the eye, I'll do that now, just to show that there is a shadow cast by that upper lid onto the top of the eye as well. And I'm just picking up a bit of regular, I don't know if this might be ultramarine blue. It could be cobalt. Sometimes I might even use indigo for this. I don't always just stick with blue in the eye. I might add a little bit of a warmer color like raw sienna, or maybe at the edge, like I kind of see maybe a purple over here. But something to darken it down because the whites of the eyes are not just white. And something about her right eye is bothering me. I think it's just that I don't have enough of the shadow on it here. When it comes to the gleam in the eye, well, she had an okay gleam in this picture, but often you have a reference that has multiple gleams. I think that's distracting. So I tend to boil it down to one gleam, and I don't like it to be in the center of the pupil either. I think that's like freaky looking. Makes them look like a zombie. So I tend to move it off to the side just a little bit. Now I'm going to have to let that dry. I do need to tone down the upper part of that iris area yet. I think I need to go in a little bit darker with the eyebrows. I need to start in on arbitrary colors then, besides what I already did with the Quinn Magenta. It's the fun colors that are coming up now. I'm adding a little bit of indigo into some spots on her eyebrows. I like multicolored eyebrows and trying to make the direction of my strokes echo the way that the hair would grow. So I need to pull some different water over here and show you where I'd put some of the blues and greens on this face. I think this is the hardest part to get used to when you're first dealing with the arbitrary colors, where to place these. So usually I'm looking for mid-tones to darker tones. Often at the side of the head here is a great place for an arbitrary color, and I often do a diagonal stroke. This is sort of a mid-tone going off to the side here. Maybe bring it down a bit. I try to merge these into areas of similar value. I'm going to put maybe a little bit above her brow here. Bring it over. And they do end up looking a bit strange at this stage because I haven't put the flesh tones on yet, and they kind of stand out. It's not as bright actually as it transfers over to my screen. I'm looking, it's way brighter on my paper. I'm going to put a little bit in this mid-tone on the side of the nose. I used to avoid putting the arbitrary colors on the nose, but I love them there now. And you would think maybe on a young child, you wouldn't want to put it in the bags under the eyes, but why not? It's going to be great. It just, to me, it just adds sparkle. It adds entertainment. It just makes the portrait so much more interesting. And speaking of that, I realized I forgot to put any information about her lower lashes over here. So sorry about that detour time. I want to put them in before I forget to do them. I'll just darken a few of these to match. Okay, so putting the blues and greens in. I try not to be too matchy, like don't put them in the same exact spot on, opposite sides of the heads. But I do try, if I use a blue over here, I might put a green over here to kind of keep things balanced. I think I'll put a green in this area that I see as a mid-tone above her left eye. Maybe I'll go with a blue in this shadow area here, up into the hair. You learn what spots kind of work. I tend to not put these cooler colors on the cheeks, but I just think these cool colors bring out the warmth of the flesh tones that we're going to be adding later. We have so many warm colors on a face. I find a face too boring if it's just all those warm tones. Okay, put a bit of green on that mid-tone area that I saw between the nose and the mouth. And how about a little bit of green on the ball of the nose here for this mid-tone. Maybe some coming down the side too. Yeah, she got a bit green there, but that's all right. This is a quick sketch. That's the other thing. It just frees you up when you know that this is just for practice or just for fun. But as I said, I use the same process on all my paintings. I am more careful. I will have more layers on the more finished works. I'm really getting more carried away than I have when I've painted Josie before, but just for fun here. I think I need a little bit of green on the left. I see a mid-tone here, and I want something entertaining there. Now, don't ignore the neck like I was doing before. I think we need something on the neck, arbitrary color-wise. That may have been a bit harsh. I might have been better off choosing a green there, but we'll go with it. And let's see. I want to go back to the eyes just for a sec because I don't think I got enough shadow on the upper, from the upper lid onto the eye. So I'm picking up some burnt umber here. I might even go with some indigo later just because it's not going that dark. Makes a huge difference to get that shadow in though. And come back and darken the pupil a little bit. I feel like her pupil got a little too rounded over there. I may need to darken the iris as well with a little bit of burnt umber. Still using my vertical strokes just because it makes it a bit uneven. If you look up closely at any of the eyes on my paintings, they're very messy looking. Now on step 2, I forced myself to think about the hair a little bit because before when I was adding the hair in step 3 only, and it just looked like an add-on, like it was an afterthought. So I'm trying to think about the darkest areas of the hair and how they work with the colors that I'm using in the face. So I will I'll usually look for the some darker areas, and I picked up a bigger brush. This is a King Art brush also, but it's a number 12, and I'm looking for areas where I can make some gestures. I don't go too far with the hair. I don't like to see individual hairs. I just want to see some masses. So this color I'm putting on now is Mineral Violet, and I want to see how it's going to work with the more local color, which would be the burnt. I'm using burnt sienna. Sometimes I use quinacridone burnt scarlet rather than the burnt sienna for the hair. I just think it has a little more glow. So there's a dark area right there. I'm liking the Mineral Violet for the darker areas in her hair. Have to be real careful over here because this shape echoes the shape of her face, and I could easily mess that up easily. Seriously, guys, are you still there? I know you are, Carol. You don't have to say anything.
I'm still here.
Okay, good. So I'm not going to go too far with the hair on this step. I'm just trying to see how my darkest tones are going to work. I might add in a little, actually I haven't used any indigo in here. This may be a little too dark, but we'll see what happens. I usually like how indigo plays with the browns, but this time I put it in with some of the Mineral Violet. Her hair is just crazy curly, and that's basically just what I want to get from this is some of the gestural sweeps of her hair. Okay, we've got a darker area coming from the barrette here. You can see why it's easier to do this when you switch to a bigger brush. You can get some nice gestural effects without doing too much detail stuff. The smaller brush, of course, makes you want to do more detail. And I don't. Yes.
Kim, this is Brenda Cretney. I was with you down in Hummelstown with Kim Johnson.
Oh, hi.
I wasn't able to take your workshop, but I am very much enjoying your demo. What a great job. What a great artist you are. And I just wanted to say hi to you.
Well, hi. It's great that you showed up here. Wow. That's very
I'm
cool.
pleased.
Yeah, great. I'm glad you could attend this. Yeah, I'm doing a workshop live in Hummelstown next week. It's going to be weird. I've basically just been doing virtual workshops lately. I don't know if I know how to talk to people in person, but we'll see. So I know I may be getting carried away here, putting a little bit too much information in the hair, but I'm enjoying it. So it's going to have to get done at some point. Yeah, I don't know about the rest of you, but Zoom has just changed our lives. I think for the better in many cases. I love the fact that been able to meet people that I never would meet and attend workshops and situations that wouldn't be possible otherwise. I think it's with us to stay. Okay, a few more strokes, and then I will move on to the flesh tones. Put a few more strokes of local color here. So as you can see, I'm trying to begin to think through the hair in step 2. When I got to step 3, I was usually tired when I was ignoring the hair, and it just really showed. So I think it makes me stop a little bit more and think it through and think about my dark tones, especially if I go in really dark on the hair and I haven't gone dark enough on the face.
Pam, I
Then
have
I
a
can make the
question
corrections.
that's put
Sure.
up in chat from Kay.
Okay.
First, she starts out with saying, "This process is really stunning. Thanks, Pam. Do you have ideas for beginner portrait painters to get a good sketch, if not very experienced? Are projectors or light table tracing okay to get a good likeness?" Good question.
That, you know, you hit on what something that's near and dear to my heart. And when you take my workshop, I do share lots of ideas about how to get the image on. And I don't know if we'll have time. If I really zip through this demo, I may be able to show you a little bit of how I use my iPad to quickly get an image on the paper when I don't feel like doing freehand. I love to freehand sketch, but I know so many people. That's a great question. It's Kay who asked that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. There are many, many ways to use technology. And I think if your objective is to draw better and to paint better, but if you're spending all your time just being frustrated with the drawing, you'll never get to this painting process. So I'm all for using whatever tech aids you can. And projecting is one way. I have a projector that I use when I'm doing my large work to at least get the initial image on. Then I might spend hours fine-tuning my drawing. I have an app called Procreate that I use to check my drawing, my freehand drawings. And Procreate can also give you a way of tracing and then printing an initial drawing, which is what I do in my workshops. So yeah, there's so many. There's another app, well, I was calling it Camera Lucida, but a wise person in this Niagara class said it was Camera Lucida. I was pronouncing it incorrectly. And it's a way of like a virtual tracing, quick way to get an image on the paper. So maybe we can take some time at the end to talk a little bit more about that. Yeah, absolutely. A beginner painter or beginner drawer might need a little bit of assistance getting going, because the painting is daunting. Of course, the drawing is even more daunting. I decided to put down a few strokes of the more local color, which would be like a raw sienna, since her hair is a bit blondish. By the way, raw sienna is as yellow as I ever go. In my workshops, we look at some of the examples of people who've used yellow. I think New Gamboge can work, but that's a bit yellow. I like the raw sienna or raw umber.
In hair, you mean? Because you do
In
use
hair,
yellow
yes.
And the face.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. But in the hair, it tends to look garish. So I'm going to declare step 2 pretty much finished. She's got some crazy color on her face, and I think we're ready to go in with my flesh tones. I'm going to try to move my iPad just a little so you can see how I handle the flesh tones. I'll try to move Miss Josie down a bit so you can still see her. The flesh tones I'm using on her and most Caucasian skin right now are vermilion and Winsor Yellow Deep. I know a lot of my friends who do this process like Scarlet Lake and Winsor Yellow Deep. I happen to love orange, so I like the vermilion is such a lovely orangey red that it's my go-to. And you'll notice I'm putting the Winsor Yellow Deep next to the vermilion. I don't mix this up because I may want to grab a patch of color, a brush full of color that's more on the yellow side, or maybe more on the orange side, or maybe right in the middle. So it kind of gets mixed up. So I don't tend to mix them up on the paper themselves. Okay, so I think we're ready to put some color on Miss Josie. Usually when I begin to put the flesh tones on, I'm using very, very deliberate strokes because I'm aware that these are the last strokes you're going to see. And I really like the energy of diagonals. So I will often start with a diagonal on the forehead and then go perpendicular to that diagonal. And of course, it may seem very dark and orangey right now, but you know how watercolor is. It's going to dry so much lighter than that. On her forehead, I don't want this to be white of the paper, so I'm going to go in with a pass of color there. Some of these strokes will go over areas that had burnt sienna. Some will pass over areas that had the arbitrary color. And some of the arbitrary color is over burnt sienna. Some of that underpainting. Some of it is poking out on its own. So some of it served to build up some of those value changes as well. I'm thinking about where I want the white of the paper. I do love to leave plenty of white of the paper. I'm squinting to try to make some good decisions here. I think, I don't know that I want to leave too much. I'll leave a little pocket of white there. I see a lighter area on this cheek. There will be one little color I will add to the cheeks at the end, and that's that Quinn Coral I mentioned. I just love that color. It's a real yummy, warm color. I'm looking at this dark area that kind of walks up her cheek. And so I'm warming up some of the areas that had those cool colors on them, like on the nose here. I feel I really liberally used a lot of that blue and green. So I'm popping in a little bit of this flesh tone here. And some of it very washy. If I take my time here, I'm not going to overdo it because sometimes I kill too many of the whites, I think. See this coming down, trying to be very deliberate. I love diagonals. I just think they have a lot of energy. I'm going to have to move Josie just a bit here. And let's see, maybe if I feel like a diagonal is going to dry too harshly on an edge, I'll touch it with a clean, damp brush to kind of soften that edge just a little bit. I don't know that I want to leave this pad between the nose and the mouth white. And I haven't really dealt with the lips. I need to go in with some more color on that too. I think I'll leave some of that chin white of the paper, but some of that I need to tone down. And go up into the hair here. Use a bit here. I need to not forget about the neck. I really should have put a little bit of darker pigment on the left-hand side of that neck. I neglected to do that. And I'm tone a bit down. Here's my lost edge, you know, going from her neck up into her cheek area. I'm not going to deal much with the clothing. In fact, if I do anything on a piece of clothing, it'll just be like a few lines like this. I have to work on clothing separately because I don't want this to become about the clothing. I want this to become about the face and working through problems on the face. Okay, so I might have left a little bit too much white of the paper. So I'm just going to deal with this and see how it is when it dries. I'm picking up a bit of the Quinn Coral that I mentioned, and I'm going to use that on her lips. I don't like to use just one color on the lips. Now, of course, I had some base colors on there. I had some Quinn Magenta there, and I had done the underpainting colors as well, the burnt sienna. I like to leave some white of the paper, for the gleam on the lips. And of course, a lost edge where the lips fade out into the skin. So the left side was a natural area for that to happen. I don't like to see lip liner, even on a woman who might be using lip liner. I don't want it to be, it's such an attention grabber. All right, so I'm gonna let that dry for a bit and work a little bit on the hair, and then come back and put some of that Quinn Coral on the cheeks to kind of warm it up. And we'll do a little bit of finishing on the hair. I'll pick up some more burnt sienna here. Well, that went really dark. That was just a little bit less transparent than I wanted, but it'll be all right. Remember, I just trying to get gestures and larger masses of the darks here. If on a more finished piece of work, yes, I will take my time on the hair and think about some smaller areas where I might want to define like a little shadow or a piece of hair, but I tend to not do much with individual hairs. I think she needs some blue in this hair. I don't want to go too crazy with arbitrary color in the hair, but blue works so well with like a blondish hair for the shadow areas. Because I used it over there, I what that was cobalt. I'm going to need to pick some up for some other places. I noticed I forgot her. I forgot her ear when it came to the flesh tones, so I could go back and do that. This girl's hair is actually quite long when you pull those curls down, but it's quite unruly. So yeah, I'm just looking for some of the darker areas. I'm not going to really go too crazy with the hair here. And I don't know when I started painting, but it hasn't even taken 45 minutes, I don't think, to get this. So you can see how quickly. Now, I do a lot of these, and it may take you a couple of hours, but you'll find the people in the workshop were shocked to see how quickly they could pull these off. Especially if you have a quick way of getting your image on there. I'm way pickier with getting the drawing on than I am with the painting part, because the drawing is what sets it all up. Okay, Josie, let's put a little bit of raw sienna in here. I do like to leave a lot of white of the paper, even if a person has dark hair. I just want to see the sparkle of the white of the paper. I just love that. We painted an African-American woman with very dark hair piled on the top of her head, and just love to see the sparkle of that paper. So, you can have some fun with these layers. I'm not going to go too far with them. Okay, so I want to show you that Quinn Coral, one of my favorite colors. This is, and it won't translate over your screen as well as it looks on the paper. And the people from our class could tell you that too. It is just a color that glows and just adds a warmth, and especially like to a young child's face, to get at that real sunny part. Just kind of a glow. I usually use it on the cheeks. Of course, I've got it on the lips in places, and you need it maybe a little bit on the chin here. And I'll put a little bit on the forehead as well. Okay, even though we've got this very choppy, deliberate stroke work and arbitrary colors, to me, I think she still reads little 3-year-old girl. And so you can keep that freshness, even though you're using some of these unusual colors. Okay, I'm not going to go too much farther with this. I tend to get carried away with the Quinn Coral. I will mention too that on the lips, I like to have a variety of colors, so I won't usually just end with that Quinn Coral. I'll put a little bit of, here's some brilliant orange, which I have on my palette because I paint flowers too. So I might put a little bit of brilliant orange in here. I got a bit carried away. Yes.
Do you use the same process when you're painting flowers?
Yes, for the most part, although the underpainting, would not be, if, no, for the most part, yes. It would depend on where the shadow shapes might be, kind of unusual colors or whatever. It's slightly different when I'm painting florals, but when I'm painting cloth or any other objects, I do use the same process. I look for the darks and I go in with my shadow shapes. It's kind of hard to explain with the florals, but it is a more direct approach when it comes to flowers. But I do try to look for the shadow shapes first. It's just a way of making sense of the piece to me. So you know what? I'm gonna stop her here, and we can talk a little bit maybe about getting your image on the paper. And if you want to take the time, I could even show you a little bit of the process from the iPad. It depends on if you want to discuss that or not. I can stop the share here and we can take other questions. You guys were so
Yes.
darn quiet.
Yes to the iPad.
Yes to the iPad. Yes to the iPad. Yes.
Yeah. Yes,
Okay, I'm hearing the yes to the iPad. Yay. I admit I carry this iPad around like a blankie, and I don't use it the way I thought I would use it. I thought I would buy this iPad and it was going to be a sketching tool, and I would buy the stylus, and I would just draw on it all the time. I don't use it that way at all. So some of you who've taken my workshops, this will be a little bit of a review, but since those of you who are asking for the iPad seem very intent about that, I'm going to show you. I'm going to slip over to screen sharing my iPad, the contents of my iPad. I will show you two things with regard to Procreate. Procreate's the app that I use for most of my work. One of the things I'll show, like right now, the painting that's behind me in my studio, I just started. One of the things I was doing was playing with different backgrounds. I was telling my group this week that I had ignored this photo because it was so yellowed out. And so I brought it into the iPad, erased around her, and then Googled some Victorian yellow patterns. And then I was able to use the layers feature. So if you look at my iPad right now, you can see the concept of layering. And I put in a layer. Oh, actually, I tried a variety of layers behind her to see how, if I turn that off, you'll see she's just on a white background because I erased it. But then I have layers that I brought in to try out various backgrounds. That's one of the ways I use my Procreate program. Here's another one where I was trying out a different background with a circus. I just Googled black, red and white stripes. There are times when I want to try out a color on something. Like this girl, she had a black blouse on, and as I was beginning to paint her, I was realizing this just wasn't going to look very exciting. So I just took my stylus. I'm using an Apple Pencil, but you could use any kind of stylus on here. This app is called Procreate. And so I tried out different colors on her top until I found the one I want. I ended up using a pink top. So I'm showing you a few things other than just drawing. This is how I use Procreate, but I'm going to switch my orientation. The way I use Procreate the most is to check my drawing. And now I've got to go change something because I just used this with my classes and I need to change it. Okay, so I'm just going to explain the concept here. And if this concept makes sense to you, you can go to my website and I have step-by-step directions, video and printed directions. So here's the concept. I'm basically using Procreate, this app, which costs less than $10. I'm using it to check my freehand drawing. And here's the concept. I have my tablet in front of me. I'm looking at my reference. I'm freehand drawing for about 10 minutes. Just a rough outline, rough sketch of the portrait that I'm wanting to work on. And then I go over to my iPad and I bring in the bottom layer, which is my reference photo that I'm drawing from. And remember, I'm drawing on a piece of watercolor paper with a pencil. And I use just a mechanical Bic #2 pencil to do this drawing. But I want to check my drawing to see if I'm on the right track after about 10 minutes of drawing. So I bring in my reference, then I add another layer. And on this layer, I'm going to take a picture of the drawing that I've done so far. So I hover there's a add picture section in here, and I hover my iPad over top of my drawing so I can get it as square as possible to take the picture. So here's the picture. Oh, well, hold on. That picture, I've got it. Something happened to that layer, opacity. It changed to something. This is called, changed to color burn, which I don't want. Hold on, you're watching Pam. There. Figure something out on her iPad that she never saw before. I think it's normal that I need here. Okay. All right. So here's the photo that I took of the drawing that I was doing on my paper. So you can see it was just a few minutes of drawing. And I want to see if I'm on the right track before I waste a lot more time doing the drawing. Now, to compare this drawing with the reference, I need to make this layer, which is just a photo, more transparent. So I go to my layers, I hit the little N, and I take the slider, move it down. Now I'll zoom in on this so you can see. You can now compare my drawing with the reference underneath. Now I admit I had to move this into place. When it comes in initially, it's going to be wonky. I'll show you. Make sure I'm on that layer. I'm just going to select that top layer. It might be off like this, so I have to grab it, and I'll put it into place as far as I can, as close as I can. Usually line up the eyes and the chin, so I can see I'm not far off. I was really pleased with this one. It only took me two tries with this one. Usually it takes me 3, but I can see I need to make adjustments on the ear. I needed to move the hair back. The hairline needs to move up a little bit. I need to enlarge the pupils. I need to raise the eyebrows. But because I have this little comparison here, it's really easy for me to make my corrections. It's a lot like gridding. Basically, it's like gridding, because in gridding, you're comparing those horizontal and vertical lines to the reference. But this is so much faster way to get you there. And you get the benefit of practicing your drawing skills. So it can improve your drawing skills in any area. So I'm looking at this. So I take my pencil and I go to my tablet where I'm drawing this on a piece of watercolor paper, and I make my corrections. It's really easy to see. Okay, I just need to move my mouth down just a tad. My ear needs to go back about 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to raise the eye line up a little bit. So easy to make those corrections. So then I'm ready to turn that layer off, and I'm going to take another picture of my revised drawing, and I lay that on top. That's another layer. So I'm going to make it more transparent here, and we'll see if I'm on track. And so I can see that I am almost there. Just a few minor adjustments. I'll have this picture where I want it to be to begin my fine-tuning my drawing. And because I do this a lot, I can get there in just a couple of steps. It took me a while to get used to this process. But if that's more than you want to deal with, I'm going to show you a way of getting an image on really, really quickly. I guess I'll take this guy. Well, he's pretty dark. Maybe I can make him light enough. Okay, so here's a way you can very, very quickly get an image. If you have an inkjet printer, you could actually print your drawing that you trace right on your iPad. So I bring a layer in that's a picture. By the way, I have instructions for this on my website too. So you bring in a layer that's a picture, you create a new layer where you're going to do a tracing. You pick up a brush. I usually just pick up a pencil and I pick a color that's very similar to the flesh tone that I like to use. And I'm going to begin doing the tracing. I don't want to trace all the lines. I'm just going to trace the basics because when I print them, you realize those printed lines can't be erased unless you can come up with some really special ink. But I just print mine on my inkjet printer, and almost any inkjet printer will handle 140-pound watercolor paper. This is how I get the images on the paper that I give to my participants in my classes.
There isn't
So
anything showing up. Are you drawing on it now?
Oh, I am. And you know what? Because it's so light, I'm going to pick a crazier color and make it bolder so you can see it. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like a magenta.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
I'll make it crazy. So I am just using a layer. It's basically it's the digital equivalent of having tracing paper on top of this image. And I don't want to do all the lines, like I said, because I realize they're going to get printed, and I'll just do my basics. But what happens, and I won't go too far with this. Now I can turn off the layer that had my reference, and what I'm left with is just my tracing. And of course, you can now go in and share this, save it as a JPEG, just print it right from your iPad or send it to your computer or whatever you want to do with it. And so one of the things I like about this is if you want to try something over and over again and don't want to retrace it or redraw it over and over again, this is about the quickest way I know to get an image onto a piece of paper.
And the watercolor paper goes right into the printer?
Yes, I've had several printers, some really cheap little printers. I have a really good printer now. I'll stop my share. I have a Canon Pixma wide format printer now, but almost any watercolor paper, any inkjet will take watercolor paper that's 140-pound or 90-pound. Usually if the paper has to go all the way around the roller, I don't know the technical term for that. That is harder. It's nicer when they just kind of feed right through. The printer I had before this, which was a Brother, it used to get stuck sometimes when I would try to print multiple pieces at once. Another app I would suggest to Kay and anybody else who's wanting to get a quick image on there is an app called Camera Lucida, or it looks like Camera Lucida, Lucida. And that app is for an Android device or an iOS device. So that is a quick way of tracing using your phone above the tracing area. And I'm not going to go into that now. If you Google that or go to YouTube, there are tons of videos about how to use the Camera Lucida or Lucida. There's a similar one called DaVinci Eye, which lets you trace within minutes. When I have people at a workshop who are not prepared for day 3 or change their mind about what their drawing is going to be, they've just propped their phone up on some books or something and drawn right there using this Camera Lucida. It's like a tracing app without any muss or fuss. No need to buy a projector.
Wow.
So DaVinci Eye or Camera Lucida for that. So
DaVinci EYE or I?
Say that again.
DaVinci I spelled as
Oh,
an I.
D-A DaVinci and then EYE. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
There are actually a few more apps who do that. it's based on a really old technology. It's based on what they think, the camera obscura concept that they think some of the old masters like Vermeer used to get their image on the paper. But of course, this is digital and it's totally magic in my mind. So you might want to check it out. Do you have other questions you want to ask here?
Could you show us some more of your quick sketch, just so that people can see all the different ages and stuff and skin color?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. Let me pull up, I can pull up my website and I will.
Also your big work, which is really cool.
Okay, I'll go to pamwenger.com and do a share screen. Go to Chrome here. Okay, so right now you're looking at a bigger piece. So you can see, even with my bigger pieces, I don't always deal with the detailed background, but I do think about my backgrounds, and this one is a large piece. It's almost on almost a full sheet. So I'm thinking about clothing, which is painstaking for me. But you can see the faces on these are done in exactly the same manner that we did that quick sketch. It's just that I'm taking more time. I'm thinking about the backgrounds. I'm integrating the colors together, and of course, working on the clothing. I wasn't happy after I finished this. I thought, I needed more arbitrary colors in that yellow. If I were doing him again, I would put more crazy colors in that yellow. So here's some of my bigger pieces. I love to take photos on trips. This guy was in Spain. This is one of my favorite models. Okay, I guess I had a couple of these. Why are my, oh, I really wasn't in larger portraits. Okay, and when I've got a section called larger portraits and a section called quick sketches. So yeah, here's a case where the background almost killed me. This is a full sheet, and I've wanted to paint these little girls for a long time. I painted them years ago before I felt I had the skills to do it. And so I drew them all out. I was going to do this splatter on the background, and I masked them all out after I spent hours painstakingly drawing them. And then I did this fancy background and pulled the masking off, and the paper just ripped to shreds. So I found out that my paper can't handle masking. So anyway, so I drew them again. And this time I was just more careful about the background, and I tried to put in my favorite colors in this background. I usually use a flat brush for the background, and except not in this one. So these are just a few of my bigger pieces. But you can see that I'm using the same process. If you look at the hands here, you see the same arbitrary colors, the same use of the white of the paper. Here I was a little bit more literal about the background, but I tried to tone it down a bit. And some more of these are all some of the bigger pieces, some that I create for shows, some that never see the light of day. You know how that goes. That Procreate program is also great for trying out things that you might not have resources to try out. Like I wanted this woman, I loved her, and I loved that she was in this big dark window, but I thought it was lacking something at the top. So in Procreate, I just drew some little vines. I just got some pictures of some vines and drew them to look at and drew them on here. And I decided I liked it. So that ended up being a way to compose that one. Yeah, some more. So those are some of the bigger pieces, but you see the same process is being, yeah, nobody likes that one. I don't know why. I just love those little doll heads. I don't know. Anyway, so I'll show you a few more of the quick sketches. I'll slip over there. So we've got a ton of these. Actually, if you go to my Instagram, if you follow me on Instagram, you see almost everything that I do. Some of these pieces were my amusement during COVID by playing along with Portrait Artist of the Week. It's a British show. They did a Facebook version of it, and they had a live model every week. And then they would post them on their website or on their show the next week. So I got a couple on the show. I had a good time with that. So yeah. Lots of quick sketches. They're my favorite thing to do because I think that's what attracted me to painting in watercolor to begin with. It's just, idea about painting loosely and freshly. Now, the further I dig into this, well, maybe not him, but you'll see some that are less fresh and less loose, because you'll be going back when I was beginning to work on these. I show my classes some of my beginning paintings because they are just like smoothed out to death. See, I'm getting back to where I really don't even like looking at these because to me they're not as fresh, except I can see I had some of them on several times. So anyway, there are tons on my Instagram, and that's probably the best way if you want to follow what I'm up to. Watch my website for when I start scheduling virtual workshops again, which will be in the new year. So I don't know, did I talk enough, guys?
Oh, right. Pam, I have one important question. It's Denise.
Okay.
All right, I tried searching for tutorials on YouTube today on how to how to import backgrounds in Procreate so that I could put my work on my pad and try different backgrounds to resolve finishing a painting. I couldn't find anything. All I could find was general Procreate, but not specifically to creating the layers and trying out the backgrounds.
Okay, I can tell it, you know, I haven't, that's probably something I should make a tutorial on, and I haven't. You know, I don't think you'll find any other tutorials on using it the way that I do with checking your drawing either, for some reason. It's very simple. Import your original, what you want in your foreground, your person or whatever, and take the eraser and erase around the person. So you just have the person left. Okay. Got that?
Yeah.
Then make a new layer. And in that layer, go to add a photo. And you need to have the photo already on your iPad or whatever.
Right.
So you need to have Google searched and saved it or whatever.
Okay.
So that's what you do. And you'll have, and you can turn it off, then turn off on layers. I think it will become apparent to you once you start playing around with Procreate and becoming more familiar with it. That's really one of the simplest processes of all.
Okay, that's fabulous, because I've been ending up taking a photo of my painting, then putting it on my printer, printing it up, and then coloring in the background, or
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, that's way more labor intensive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, one of the things I have done is if I'm working on a painting and I want to see what different painted backgrounds would be, I may take a photo of the person that I'm painting,
Right.
and bring it into Procreate, erase around the background, and then actually physically paint some little watercolor possibilities and take a picture of them and import them in as the background so I can see an actual watercolor background. Once you start getting familiar with this, you'll figure out ways to play with it and do other things. But honestly, I don't know how I lived without that program. That program does so much, and it does take some getting used to. And there's a lot of bells and whistles, but you don't really need them all. You just need some of the basics.
Yeah, well, you're brilliant to figure out what you've figured out. It's so
You have to spend some time with it. Yeah. And there are a lot of basic tutorials on using Procreate, but I really don't use it for drawing, you know, other than the tracing piece and, you know, a few odds and ends here. So I don't know, Betty, tell me if we need to sign off or if we have more.
Well, we do have a few more minutes. I don't know if folks have more questions. I think the technology piece that you went through with us, you know, is so useful. And some people in our group had some to also share. I think pinetools.com was someone talked
Right.
about
You know,
posterizing.
Right, that's a great one for figuring out the layers. I think one of the hardest things for people to do is flatten out the value planes in that first step. And one of the things that we showed them was how to use a tool called Pine Tools. Actually, Pine Tools has a posterizing segment in it. And I'm just going to show you something that's been posterized with Pine Tools. So you get the concept. So when I say posterized, that's what I mean. Flattening out the value planes. I know that one, the colors are weird, but that doesn't even matter. We're looking at the darkest values, the midtones, the lighter values, and it gives you an idea of where you might want to be drawing those shapes for step one, to put in your underpainting. So that was Pine Tools. There's Notanizer. Of course, Photoshop has filters built into it that could do this as well. Lots of other tools would do the posterizing.
Sketch Guru.
Sketch Guru, yes. That one I didn't know about till you guys are, this tech savvy class showed me Sketch Guru, which I am definitely going to use. I've got that on my iPad now. It was another great tool for flattening out value planes and seeing some different perspectives. And Ed just had some fun ways of interpreting your reference photo too.
When I went on your website, Pam, I did look at the tutorials that you had on using Procreate, and I would suggest to people, if that's something that you're interested in, that's certainly a great place to start, because you explained it so well. And you also did tonight, but they can also go back. They can look at this video, or they can look at those videos again and again.
Right.
To try it out.
Yeah, I agree. Tonight, I was just trying to give you the concept of it.
Right.
I don't expect that you would be able to duplicate that. And if what you're really just interested in is that whole tracing bit and the printing, I do have a little tutorial on that. I think it may be just a written tutorial, step-by-step written tutorial. I have to go back and look. Yeah, that's just something that I found really helpful, because I want to take a little bit of the drawing out of the mix when it comes to doing the workshops. When we do the first couple paintings, I do print lightly on a piece of watercolor paper and have the people finish it. I just think everyone's drawings are, skills are at such different levels that that becomes a whole class in itself if you're going to do the drawing. That's why I love discovering a quick way to trace and print them. Before I discovered how to do this on Procreate, I was drawing them free, scanning them, and then printing them. But the trouble with that was the printer always picked up some kind of value from the scan. And so you had too much printer ink laid on the paper, and then people were trying to paint on top of that, and it made it challenging. That's why I like this tracing method better. Yeah. So I would just like to, since you've shown up tonight, obviously you love watercolor and you're curious or interested to some extent in portrait painting. I just can't imagine not having portrait painting in my life, and you might think it's just such a challenging area, but now you've heard about some tech tools that can get you a head start on the game, and you have a plan of attack. So if you're looking for more instruction, I have a YouTube channel and I have a number of videos on there where I talk you through the steps. Usually they're speeded up like 1.5 times, but I'm narrating in the background, going through the steps. So
I found them very helpful. And I looked at them before the workshop, and then the workshop reinforced everything and explained it even more. So I suggest that, that I think there was a lot of excitement and enthusiasm generated tonight. I've been looking at the chat and I've been texting with a few people during this. I suggest that people do check out your website and your YouTube channel, and also look for your future virtual classes. And start having fun
You're hired.
Yeah.
with arbitrary colors.
Yeah, it is fun. You want portrait painting, you got to take the whole daunting, scary piece out of it and have some fun with it. So that's what we're trying to encourage you to do.
Well,
Yeah.
this
Don't,
has all been recorded, as people who are here at the very beginning know. So I'm going to try to
Okay.
get it up by Saturday morning onto the Niagara Frontier Watercolor Society YouTube channel. It's open to everybody. You don't have to be a member, although I will send out a link to all the membership in the regular email. But this has been great, Pam. You're just so inspirational.
Super.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you. I feel like I've been to your area. I really do. I feel like I know your group. And thank you for the things in the chat. I'm just now reading the chat as well, enjoying that. It's amazing how Zoom, even though this is all virtual, you can feel a sense of who the people are that you're interacting with. I've truly enjoyed spending time with you the last 3 days and tonight for those of you who are just joining. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pam.
I'm going
Pam.
to
Thank you,
stop
Pam.
recording.
Bravo.
Hopefully our paths will cross again. The
Hopefully.
watercolor world is small
Yes.
compared to other painting worlds, so maybe they will.
Okay.
Maybe they will.
Thank you so much.